So it's Bruce here once again, and today what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time showing you both old and new ways of building wooden ladders for your models. Let's just take a look at what we have here. We got two legs for your ladder and a whole bunch of steps. So have at it. Build a ladder. Let's see if you can see those. I'll zoom in if I need be. Okay, itty bitty rungs on your ladders and the legs. So what's the approach? How do we build a ladder out of that? Well, let's look at what kit manufacturers starting in the 60s would do, and then we'll take a look at how I approach it now. I don't want to lose all these because I'm going to build a ladder out of it later. I'll get those out of the way. Okay, starting in the 60s, maybe even before, when a kit manufacturer wanted you to build a ladder, they would, in their plans, give you full-size diagram of the ladder they want you to build. And they would give you usually the dimensions of the lumber. In this case, if you can read that, it says 0.020 by 1/16 of an inch uprights. That's the legs. And the rungs are out of the same material, and they give you a template for cutting your rungs right there on the diagram. They expected you to lay the strip wood over that and cut it right there. Now, for years, I made ladders that way. Once I got my first kit that had a diagram like that, I photocopied it, and because this will get chewed up as you build on it, but I photocopied it and always kept a copy. And here's how you would approach that. Modeler's friend, Scotch double-sided tape, just their regular double-sided tape. And we're going to take a piece and lay it right on top of that ladder diagram. And that's going to hold our rungs in place. Let's take those rungs that we looked at, get both of them out here, and now we'll take a look at just putting them in place. Okay. Now you can see what I'm working on here is a piece of MDF, 3/4 inch. And it's MDF is great because it's very stable, doesn't warp and so forth. And the reason I like working on boards like this is that when you want to use a square, it's raised up above your desk, and so you can just put your square right on it like this. And you can use your square. And when I cut these, I made sure that each corner was 90 degrees so I can go in from any angle. That becomes very, very helpful. The first thing we're going to do is put these on top of the tape, the two legs, starting at the very bottom, and just pressing down, and that tape will keep that leg vertical. And you do the same thing on this side. And now you have the legs of your ladder available on your MDF. And I think you can see that. The next thing you're going to do is, and I work primarily with a curved tweezers like this. For years I had straight tweezers, and they're fine. But you always have to come in straight from on top, and these are nice because you can come in from the side. You would put a dab of glue on each very end, and then looking down straight, put it down. Now you can see me shaking. At my age, 3/4 of a century old, I got a certain amount of tremors going all the time, and this becomes problematic. Excuse me. But a lot of people can still make ladders that way, and I certainly made my share of ladders that way. So that's old school. What I'd like to do now is show you a more modern approach. In a previous video, I showed you how I built my ladder jig. And today what I want to do is actually show you using the ladder jig. And you can see I'm saying I use 2-inch stock, so it's 2x4 legs and 2x3 rungs. And if you saw my previous video on making this jig, you will recall that I said originally I had a piece of styrene glued across the bottom so I could just insert the legs and it would run dead against that stop. And then I came upon the first ladder I had to do that wouldn't work for, and that was this, let me zoom back out here, this Campbell oil derrick, which has a ladder to end all ladders on it that goes from the roof up all the way to the top of the tower. This also has 2 smaller ladders, so you can see I needed to make 3 ladders for that build. So I think some people say, why in the world are you building a jig for ladders? Because I have to build ladders all the time. I scratch built this water tank, and there's 1 ladder there, and lo and behold, there's another ladder on the side of the tank over here. So that build required 2. My current build, which is this engine house, is going to have 2 ladders spaced like this going up the roof for access to the water barrels that are up on the platform on the roof. There, I think you can see that. So I'm going to need 2 like that. And I'm going to need 1 ladder to go from the ground up to the roof. So I'll be building 3 ladders for that as well. So plenty of ladders all the time. And that justified certainly making that jig. So let's look at using the jig. I have the ladder in here, and I don't know if you can see, but this ladder is going to ultimately be longer than what the jig is also. You can see the legs sticking up the top. And so once again, I'm going to have to build part of the ladder, which I've done here. You can see the rungs are on the bottom already. And then get the ladder out of the jig and remove that board down at the bottom that is just used as a stop. And you can see I put it on with masking tape so I can take it off. Now, try to be very careful on not getting glue onto the jig, and it's white glue, so it does come off fairly easy. But still, to remove the ladder out of the jig, you have to just be rather gentle. I'm getting underneath these legs here with the number 11 blade, and I'm just going to wiggle it a little bit to break it loose. And that came loose, and that came loose. It's easier up here because there was no glue involved yet. You just kind of work your way down wiggling. You don't want to break these, but you want to break them loose from whatever little bit of glue is in there. And these are somewhat a tight fit when you start building your ladder in there. So it's there, that's substantially loose now. And finally, there's the ladder. Now, what I'm going to have to do to continue is just move the ladder down, slide it back down against the appropriate stops, and now I can I can build the rest of the ladder. So the way this jig again was built was there's room next to each of these sides for the 2x4 to sit, and then all of these stops in here are for spacing your rungs, and you can see then that you get nice evenly spaced rungs. To do the gluing, I usually just put, and let me make sure you can see my work here. Basically you can. I use this shiny paper that I get from, our postage stamps in the United States come on in little sheets that you peel off of this shiny paper, and I cut that paper up and I put a dab of glue on it, and I pick the glue up with a toothpick. I basically never apply glue directly from the container onto whatever I'm dealing with, and I pick up one of the rungs and a toothpick. I'm going to get just a little bit of glue on it, put one little dab on each end. This is like the old Vitalis commercial for those who are old folks like me. A little dab will do you. You don't need much. And then I put it into position for the next rung. Push it down hard into position. Now, even though I had only put a tiny little bit of glue on there, some did ooze out, and I want to get rid of it so you don't see it on the final model, but also so it doesn't help hold everything into the jig when I try to get it out. So I just take an extra second and I dig that extra glue out. And then I go on to the second one. And I'm not going to finish this on this video, but I just want to show you the process here. So a tiny dab on the very end of each rung. That's going to go down on the legs using my toothpick. And then into position in the jig, bringing it down close to that, not close, but against that spacer that I have in there. So nice and tight down there. Once again, getting a toothpick, take off the excess glue. And I will continue doing that all the way up. When I'm done, you saw how I carefully pried it out of position there, and that's how I'll get it out, and I'll have another ladder done. So that produces a much more consistent ladder than the old school method of taping it on the drawing and trying to space all of the rungs perfectly. One last tip, you saw that on the old school method, they gave you a template for cutting your rungs on the paper. So you'd cut each one, and there's going to be some variation in their length no matter how careful you try to be. Of course, today we can use a chopper, and it's certainly one of the most essential tools for any modeler. This is the Northwest Shortline smaller version with the rubber pad on it. It's indispensable. I use it on absolutely every build. And what I want to show you is just a little common sense tip, but it's surprising how many years it took before I thought to do this. So I needed to adjust the cutter to cut the rungs, and the rungs have a certain tolerance. They have to be pretty much a tight fit between the two sides of the jig. And so what I've done is I got the correct distance by some measuring and trial and error, and then I cut a piece that I have labeled rung, and I keep it, and when I want to adjust my chopper, I bring the blade down, slide that against the blade, bring the stop over against it, tighten it down, and put this back in my bin, and I now have the rungs. In here you're going to see that as I've been building, You know, there's going to be a first time I need a 15-foot length of, I think you can, trying to see if you can see the 15 written on there. Now, if it'll focus, we'll be good. This thing always takes a while to come into focus. But anyway, I make a sample up for each one. So first time I need a 15-foot length, I finagle till I get 15 feet. Then I cut a piece like this, label it. Next time I need a 15-foot piece, can just loosen that, bring it in there. Use a 5-foot piece. And I have now in my little Spam can loads and loads of these things for a lot of different lengths. It saves me a heck of a lot of time when I'm building a model. So I think that's it. Ladders, you can go old school, but if you want to take about 20 minutes and make a jig the way I discussed in the previous video, I think it would really pay off. So I think this is coming up close to my 30th video. If you enjoy it, then why don't you give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I tend to model in spurts, and this is one of those spurts. I'll be adding a few more videos over the next few days, so why don't you subscribe? Okay, that's it.